Okay, thank you, Shoshana. My name is Catherine Miro, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Washtenaw County. Welcome to tonight's forum. These candidates will be on the ballot in the general election on Tuesday, November 5th. The League of Women Voters works to expand voter rights and educate voters. We are a nonpartisan organization and are providing this forum in conjunction with the Ypsilanti District Library as an opportunity for candidates to express their views related to their candidacy. Statements expressed by the candidates are neither endorsed nor opposed by the League. Also, the League does not certify any candidate responses to questions as accurate. Voters are encouraged to fact-check information shared at the forum. We bring you tonight's forum because we believe deeply that respectful sharing of views on community issues is vital to the functioning of American democracy. Our guest moderator this evening is Taryn Willis. We're very proud and happy to have her back again. Taryn Willis is a native of Ypsilanti. She graduated from Huron High School and attended Eastern Michigan University, where she obtained a communications degree with a minor in English and American literature. Taryn also received her master's from Concordia University, Ann Arbor, in educational leadership. She has had a 20-year career in event planning, marketing, and communications, working at various nonprofit organizations and public schools. She most recently joined Washtenaw Community College as the new marketing manager. Taryn also coaches boys and girls tennis at YCS and is going into her 8th year of coaching. She manages a household of 2 toddlers and a husband and has an adult son who works in banking. Taryn will now explain the forum and get us started.
Thank you, Catherine. Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here again. Okay, there we go. All right, just a few house rules. It's my honor to introduce the candidates running for the November general election for City Council Ward 2, if you want to raise your hand for Ward 2, and for Ward 3. In Ward 2, candidates are Independent Peter Church and Democrat Stephen Wilcoxen. Did I say that correctly? All right. For Ward 3 candidates, we have Democrat Amber Fellows and Libertarian Mark King. Thank you all for participating today. The forum will follow this format. Each candidate will have an opening statement of up to 90 seconds. I will ask questions which came from the community. Then I will present audience questions to the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to a question unless I note a different time limit. After the questions, each candidate may make a closing statement of up to 90 seconds. Candidates are to focus on the issues. Personal attacks are not permitted. At appropriate times, a league representative will indicate the time remaining, 30 seconds, and then stop, right over there. If you have used up your time, you will be allowed to finish your sentence. If you go over your time, you will be asked to stop in fairness to all. The candidates will begin speaking in alphabetical order by last name. Both candidates will have an opportunity to be the first or last to answer the questions. Following the questions from myself, which will last approximately 30 minutes, we will begin asking written questions from the audience. Audience members, our volunteers will be circulating in the room with note cards and pens. Please write down your questions and give the card to one of your volunteers. To ensure fairness, a question must be addressed to both candidates, all candidates, and all candidates will have a chance to answer the question. In addition, community members watching on our live stream can type in questions for candidates. I will read the questions from live and remote audience members. If there are numerous questions on the same topic, we may combine them into one question for the candidates. Audience members are not permitted to make audio or video recordings of the forum. We will make a full recording of the forum available to the public. Also, please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. All right, you guys ready? Okay, we're now ready for opening statements from Peter.
Hi, thanks for coming out tonight, everybody. My name is Peter Church. I'm running for City Council for Ward 2 as a Democrat leaning independent. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. I worked my way through school, so I certainly know how that goes, and definitely one of the areas I'm interested in. I've worked in the automotive sector for 24 years. I have worked on projects from $3 million to about $22 million. So I'm familiar with project management and also the critical thinking that comes with being an engineer. I've participated locally in a couple different things. The Heritage Festival Star Party, where we arranged for the Moon Rock to be here, if anybody remembers that. Also, Friends of Candy Cane Park, friend of Peninsular Park, and I organized a couple of the park cleanup days. I think that I've mentioned that I've also, or I didn't mention, I've lived in College Heights for 24 years. I think I understand what people are interested in College Heights, but I'm always interested in more input, and so I've set up a campaign website, www.votepeterforward2.com. So I really do hope you'll reach out and contact me with your concerns and your questions about Ward 2. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. And now, Amber, may we have your opening statement?
I don't know if we're holding the mics or not. Well, first I want to thank the Ypsi Senior Center for hosting. Is this on? Check, check, check. Check. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank the sound tech and video tech, as well as Ypsi Senior Center, Taryn, everyone that comes together to put these events on. It's very important. So thank you. And yeah, my name is Amber Fellows. Hi, everyone. I'm a multi-decade resident of Ypsilanti. I've been here for 22 years. I'm a community organizer and 3-time city official, and I'm running for Ypsilanti City Council, Ward 3, as the Democratic candidate in the 2024 general election now. As council member, I will act to progress resident-led initiatives, grow climate and community resilience, and advance housing justice in Ypsilanti. So thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Mark, may we have your opening statement, please?
Hi, I'm Mark Allen King. I've been a resident here in Ypsilanti for 6 years. I am one of the few libertarians that actually is a party member around in the area. I'm also the chair of the Washtenaw County Libertarian Party, officially known as the Huron Raisin Libertarian Party. I ran for mayor 2 years ago also as a libertarian, and my platform is to be a libertarian, just try to decrease the government where we can. Where we do need the government, we need to be very precise on what we're doing and what we're spending money on. There's nothing, we don't need to have any vanity projects, we just need to get the work done so that we actually have a functioning community.
Thank you, Mark. Stephen, I'm sorry.
Steve's fine.
Again, thank you for, is it on? Good. Thank you for, to the YDL and the League of Women Voters for holding these forums. My name is Steve Wilcoxen. I'm a Democratic candidate for Ward 2. I've lived in the city for 30 years, and I've raised 2 kids and have 2 grandkids that they all chose to stay in the city when they graduated. In that time, I've been on council for 6 years. I've been the mayor pro tem for the last 2. In that time, I've weathered the 3 city managers and 3 different mayors. Went through a lot of the changes and helped guide the city through those changes in some tumultuous times. In that role, I've been the liaison to a number of committees, currently in the Planning Commission, the Non-Motorized Advisory Committee, the Sustainability Commission, which draws on some of my training in environmental health. I've written and amended ordinances on many topics, specifically the cannabis ordinance for recreation. I wrote that with help from Annie Somerville. I've been the pen been the point of contact and worked with the Huron River Watershed Council for the removal of Penn Dam, and that's been an ongoing process that has garnered 2 different rounds of funding from the DNR and Eagle. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. And now to the questions. I will read the question only once, but I am happy to repeat a question if you request. We will start with Amber for the first question. The topic is knowledge of position. What are the primary roles and responsibilities of an Ypsilanti council member, and what do you consider to be the highest priority?
Okay. So, you know, from watching council over the years, I think what I have come to understand is, you know, while we do have a representational style government, the highest priority for me is to have more opportunities for residents where issues are actually impacting them to actually have voice in decision making. So one of the highest priorities is just expanding democratic opportunity to more people. So it isn't just me and 7 city council members making every decision for every situation. And so, you know, there's many functions of city council, but we live in a city with a city manager strong government. So, you know, city manager takes direction from council, and then they are the ones that apply the directives from council. But, you know, in a situation where we have elections that are, you know, sometimes very poorly voted on, as in our primary elections, we have about 10 to 15% voter turnout. We have very few people actually weighing in on who our representatives are, and so those folks don't necessarily have as much direction as they need from the community to be able to assert what the community needs for the city manager to implement. So that is my understanding of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
The role of, more direct in the microphone. The role of a city council member is to represent the ward that they were elected from. And yeah, just as Amber said, to direct the city director to actually run the city from our directions. But the most important thing for me coming into this is that it's really expensive to live here. And one of the biggest problems of that is the taxes are really high. And that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thank you. The role of city council person is to represent and advocate for the citizens of the entire city. We are elected by specific wards, but every decision we make impacts everybody in the city. So I represent the entire city, but I'm elected by folks in Ward 2. As mentioned, setting goals for the city annually. With that, we do that with by committee with the rest of the council, and then follow up with prioritizing the budget for the coming years. With that, the priorities that we have in front of us at this time, we have aging infrastructure that needs to be dealt with. We've been working to get that, get funding for that. We have a housing crisis, as Amber can well attest to. So that's those. Then we have safety issues. You know, a lot of complaints from speeding around the neighborhoods to folks on the street, and how do you equitably deal with that? And so giving people respect while also preventing crimes and prey upon those people that are on the street. So those are the priorities.
Thank you. Peter?
Thank you. I view my duties as representing mainly Ward 2. The way that the city is structured is we have the 3 wards, and while all of the things affect everybody, we're supposed to be a little bit more ward-centric in terms of trying to gather information. The problem in Ward 2 is that we have, for instance, gone without an election for 8 years. And it seems that there is not a lot of interest in the government. And when I talk to people about it, the problem seems to be that, well, we say things and then they do whatever they want anyway. I want to try and change that so that everybody feels like when a decision is made, they own it. A couple of ideas that I have in that regard are to reform the committee system so that every committee has fair representation from every ward. Another aspect that I'm interested in is having more things on the ballot, reducing the number of signatures or allowing the city council to put more questions that don't need to be decided immediately on the ballot. Of course, the other and critical job that city council does is balance the budget and form a budget for every year. And I view that as a very critical part of the job and something that I would take very seriously and hopefully apply my analytical thinking to that job. Thanks.
Thank you. The next topic is housing. First question goes to Mark. What are your direct action steps to increase access to affordable and sustainable housing in Ypsilanti?
Well, as I said with the previous question, is the tax rate is just simply too high. I've heard from multiple people that their tax burden every year it exceeds $10,000, which if you're a landlord, for example, that means in order to even maintain the property properly and to pay the taxes, you're pushing $2,000 a month. Or you're going to do like what they've done in the rest of the city and segment these houses into 3 to 6 units, which if you've ever been in any of them, they're less than desirable for the amount of money that they actually charge for that. So if we can actually make the city more favorable to both landlords and homeowners so they don't have to pay such a heavy burden, it would make it a lot better for all of us that we don't have to keep shoving all of our money into just our housing just to fund the government.
Thank you. Stephen?
Direct actions for increasing and access to affordable housing. I've been working with the Planning Commission to redo the zoning ordinances to allow for more creative structures and configurations for housing, to allow beyond the straight residential and renters that we have at this point. The tax burden here is one of the problems with that as well. We don't get people moving in here that the housing market is skyrocketed. Problem with that is that we have 50% of our almost 50% of our land mass is tax free due to the university and the churches and nonprofits in our organization or in our city. So specifically just working through with landlords to step up the inspection process. The housing stock that we have is crumbling. We've been working with developers to get more housing new stock in 3 different developments in the past couple of years on Clark Road and on the east side, and then looking forward to working with developers to create housing on Water Street and have mixed housing there with a good percentage of that to be affordable housing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Peter?
This is a question that comes up a lot, and I've done quite a bit of research recently into it. One of the things that I wanted to mention, and so that everybody understands, is when we get affordable housing, we are getting it through HUD funding, through MISHDA, which is the Michigan Housing Association. And then that money is given to the developer, and they get low-income housing tax credits, LIHTC, to fund bonds that allow them to finance and build the housing. But in addition to that comes strings. One of the strings that's always there is that when we get affordable housing, and they say there's affordable housing in Ypsi, it does not mean that people in Ypsi are moving into that housing. When we build something in Ypsi, because we have the Fair Housing Act, it means that people from anywhere can move into that housing that have the correct income level, meet the correct income levels. And another aspect of it is that if there's someone who's really desperate, like on the streets, they have a family, any number of problems like that, they go to the top of the list regardless of where they come from. So really, when I see these housing developments, which cost us $24.9 million in lost tax revenue that we had to give to the developer, Jeremy Bronfman, who is a billionaire, to build the Clark Street housing, it's really not helping us. It's not lowering rents. It's not going to lower your rents. The only way to lower our rents is to either be able to lower our taxes or alternately to try and find ways to make it more affordable for people by getting them better jobs or better paying jobs. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, so rising rents, rising homelessness, housing insecurity. This is one of the existential threats that's facing residents in Ypsi face, because at nearly 70% of households, Ypsi, has almost 70% renter households, and that means most of the residents here are affected by the crisis that we're experiencing all over the country, but in places like Ypsilanti, where there's been push to gentrify for decades now. And I do agree with the, ending the excessive tax subsidies to developers and reducing residents' tax burden. It is one of the strategies among many strategies to help with the housing crisis. But I do want to mention that, since I've been paying attention, which is nearly 10 years now, there has been complete inaction by our present city council. And so that is something that is personal to me, as my friends, my community members, my family here are very affected by this issue. So, among things that we can do is at least replicate similar programs that are in the area. Detroit has a program called Make It Home, where the city does purchase houses that are in foreclosure and help renters that live in the housing then obtain that housing. We can do that here with tenant right of first refusal. That is something that's been implemented in many areas of the country. We also, anyone that is a representative of a city of 70% rental households ought to fight the preemption to stop rent control. So we need to fight that so cities like Ypsilanti can actually make public determinations of rent, and it's not just a de facto decision made by private landlords, because they do communicate with each other, they do set the prices. So, this is among many things that we need to do, and I just want to mention some parts of my record. So I was among the people that struck the historic housing deal for Dorsey Estates, mandating for sale homes for people that make $35,000. And we did put a prioritization for Ypsi residents to be able to engage in that housing first.
Thank you. Okay, next topic is priorities. What makes your ward unique? Is your duty to your constituents or to all city residents? And we will start with Stephen.
What makes my ward unique? For better or worse, I think it has a higher income level that's just there. My job is to represent everybody in the city, and I take that very seriously. I do spend more time in our ward talking with residents about what the issues are. The flooding in the past, a couple of years ago, I spent a lot of time out helping folks with that and getting them connected with FEMA for some assistance there. The priority is representing everybody in the city. The demographics across the city are stark, and they mimic the the demographics across the county as well. And so I need to represent the people in my ward as well as representing everybody in Ward 1 and Ward 3. Priorities for me are the aging infrastructure that we have, the public safety. There are lots of issues downtown that need to be dealt with, and that needs to be coordinated with the police department and also with working for an unarmed crisis response team. We've tried to fund that in the last couple of years and has gotten nowhere. There's 3 of us on council that have been working for that for a while. Housing has been developed, the budget, we have a deficit, and we need to find new ways to generate revenue. The cannabis ordinance is the only thing in the last 5 years that has actually increased our revenue, aside from grants money that is coming into the city. So we need to find ways to attract businesses to get more revenue to take the burden off our residents.
Thank you. Peter?
All right, thank you for the question. In contrast to Steve, I really feel that I am more Ward 2 centric. I think that our voice is a little bit underrepresented because Ward 1 and Ward 3 are more similar, or at least maybe I should say Ward 2 is kind of an outlier in the city in a lot of ways. And I think our biggest strength is education in Ward 2. Many of my neighbors are professors or accomplished educators with advanced degrees. A number of professionals who work in engineering and technology. And what I think makes that important is we have gone through the education process, sometimes to the ultimate highest level of a PhD. And because of that, we know what it takes, and we know how to encourage others to do it. One of the funnest things that I've done in the neighborhood is I had a couple rocket launch nights where we launched model rockets. And these little kids, they're 8 or 10 years old, they come out and we launch some rockets and stuff. And it stuns me how smart they are and how few of them are getting the chance they deserve. That's my job. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber?
Oh, yes. So besides, the geographical elements of Ward 3 having, all parts of kind of business districts and multiple parks, and really it has, a lot of lovely diversity within all of Ypsilanti. What makes Ward 3 unique is that we actually have consistent competitive races, which the rest of the city does not. And so, therefore, our ward vets ideas among us much more, and we have a better idea of what residents on the ground actually might want. I do want to mention that, boundaries are a human construct and something we need to begin to move away from. Segregation is a part of our history in Ypsilanti. So, while we can talk about our uniqueness of our wards and mostly attending to the needs of our wards, we have to face the reality that, whatever made up our ward was actually linked, intrinsically with other parts of the geography around us, including Ann Arbor. And just a side note, I've been living in Ypsilanti for a long time. We have like cute little battles between wards, and I've been hearing from older constituents that there's been drama between Ward 3 and Ward 2 for a very long time, and it's just kind of interesting to hear about the ways people identify with their specific geography, and I think it's interesting. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
What's really cool about Ward 3 is you've really got kind of a slice of everything. You've got the student housings that were right over next to the university, all the way out to just Depot Town, and then you've got like the single-family home neighborhoods out where I live. So it's kind of a very interesting part of the city where, as a representative, it would actually be kind of tricky to keep them all in mind. Though the point of like how I would do it as a city council member would be to mainly focus on Ward 3 and what the people want over there, but to do that with the cooperation of everybody else on the city council so that I can have a focus where I'm at, they can have the focus in their wards, and we can all work together to make the city function the way we want it to.
Thank you. Let's now focus on the topic of public safety. Local media reports that downtown Ypsilanti business owners complain about crime and about behavior by homeless individuals. How can these concerns be addressed consistent with the city's commitment to community policing standards? And Peter.
Thank you for that question. I want to start off by saying if people want to defund the police, I'm not your candidate. Just don't vote for me, because I don't believe in defunding the police. If we have bad officers, let's get rid of them. If we need a stronger social component, let's add it. But we need our police to keep our city safe. Another thing is that I would not support banning criminal background checks. Banning criminal background checks is something that would cause potential danger to people. HUD gets to do background checks. People have a right to be safe, and not banning it is not mandating it. There's still going to be places where felons can get an apartment. I'd like to see much more transparency on crime in the city. We have very little information when there's like a shooting or a need for police to police an area that is out of the ordinary, and I'd like to know more about it, because that helps us decide how many police we need and what type of skills they need to be able to do the job. I think I would like to see, therefore, more complete police contact reports, not just the crime blotter type arrangement that we have now. I'd like to hear more about drug overdoses. There have been 44 overdoses in Washtenaw County so far as of the September 15th. I think that we need to have a mandatory drug treatment arrangement for addicts in our city. Other countries have done this type of thing, but because of their constitutions and so on, it's easier to force people to do it. For us, we don't really have that tool, but we need to find ways to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber?
So the question is about policing, and so my concern is really about police accountability, which we have very low police accountability in Ypsilanti. There has been recent issues that officers arrived to the scene and someone, but via self-inflicted harm, ended up in the hospital. And we don't know why, at least I don't know why, and I haven't been able to find the answer. So I think we need to be able to have better processes for understanding how to access body cam footage and how to get information from the YPD. One of the things that people have been running on since 2022 is to fund a crisis unarmed response team. And that has yet to be seriously contended with. And instead, there's been more and more allocations sent to the YPD that are forecasting an incredible budget shortfall. And those positions haven't been filled for years and years and years. I can't remember how many years it is now, but I think right now we have 8 vacant positions, but we're always riding around 6 to 8 vacant positions. So we need to understand that this is not a working thing for our community, and efforts like community-based safety, who are actually on the ground in the areas where there is more residents who are impoverished and need services, are there to attend to specific needs that our community faces. So we need to look at other solutions.
Thank you. Mark?
To be quite frank, my experience just being an employee at Taproom late at night, the police force here is a joke. We'll have people coming in here. I've been assaulted. I've had weapons drawn on me. I've been accosted. I've been harassed. All, you name it. The last time I called the police department myself, I think was because a kid threw a smoke bomb in, and I called them, because I didn't know exactly what was thrown inside the bar. Took them 2 hours to arrive, and it required us to pull a favor from an officer at EMU. That's ridiculous, and this is not an isolated case either. And from just feedback I've gotten from officers that have worked in Ypsilanti, it sucks to work here. They don't want to stay. So we need to address this. Now, I completely agree with everybody else that police accountability is a major thing as well. They are members of our community. They need to be held accountable. But they are necessary. Otherwise, you'll end up with what happens in downtown. You have people just roaming up, screaming and yelling and harassing people for money. You even have cases where people are going up into apartment buildings and knocking and soliciting people for money and, well, other things. The public safety here is, again, it's a joke. And I know that I live it every week while working in downtown.
Thank you. Stephen?
Regarding the recent media attention to downtown, the problems that are going on now have been going on for quite some time in downtown. Under the previous police administration, there was always the concern, the statement that they were understaffed and they couldn't do it. And if your downtown is not a priority to protect the citizens that are on the street, and then that was problematic. We did give funding for more police officers, and they never got hired. And at some point, I moved to rescind that funding for them and put that towards the unarmed crisis response. And that didn't go anywhere. We didn't have enough movement on council to get that through. The most recent time, there was a vote of three of us for the unarmed response team to 4 that were against it. And so we needed another person to do that. We've hired a new police chief. He has recruited a number of, quite a few new cadets into the force, and they're bringing more every month to get the staffing up to be able to cover that. On Washington Street, the problems on Washington Street have been there for a long time, from the transit center down to the beer cooler. During the pandemic, when we had a social district, they got considerably out of hand, and the police chief at the time was ineffective at doing anything about that. Now, to solve that problem, is going to take a partnership with the folks that are on the ground feeding people, such as Fed Up and Growing Hope, and the police. And Growing Hope and Fed Up have asked for more patrols, so that the people that frequent and get food there are not preyed upon by drug dealers. There's also a move to have drug testing within the city, so that folks that are addicted can get it tested and know what they have in their stash.
Thank you. To stay on the topic of policing, the topic is unarmed police response. Unarmed response has been a city council goal for multiple years. If elected, how would you move this policy forward? And we're going to start with Amber.
Yeah, simply put our money where our mouth is. I think it would we ought to strengthen any big changes we do in the city by at least surveying affected communities to actually see how people that are affected by over-policing, by poverty, by homelessness, by substance use, want to be supported. And so I think, if we did surveying that say, like, should we invest in unarmed crisis response, we're going to get a very, large percentage of people that are in support of that. So I think when we do anything like this, it would be helpful to council to get community input on it and then actually shift our monies to be in alignment with the values that we say.
Thank you. Mark?
Could you repeat the question real quick?
Sure. Unarmed response has been a city council goal for multiple years. If elected, how would you move this policy forward?
I wouldn't. And the simple reason is because where's the funding? The city runs a deficit. And also, what is the reason for the 4-3 vote for it? Is this plan sound? Our police force isn't that great as it is. So why not we actually try to get that up and going and get that working? And then we can start exploring more options. If I'm even correct, Ann Arbor even rejected a similar measure. So it's like, it's not that outlandish for us to try to fix what we've got and not try to keep spending more money on things that sound nice, but we don't actually know how they're actually going to affect the community.
Thank you. Stephen?
To move this forward, when this came up for a vote in council, I sat in meetings with two of my colleagues on council, the city manager and the police chief and members of the community to discuss how an unarmed response team would function. We worked on a request for proposals and studied the system that, or the proposals that Ann Arbor had put forward. Those were problematic in a lot of ways, and I think everybody at the table acknowledged that. But we need to continue working on this. And as far as the funding goes, there's a lot of funding in the police department. It is the biggest chunk of money out of our budget. Close to 65% of our budget goes to the police department. And recently we spent $150,000 on tasers, which never got a report from the chief on how often those are deployed. So we spent $150,000 on a piece of equipment that we don't even have a record for the deployment of. So that funding alone, or alternatively taking money from police officers that are to be hired, could fund an unarmed response team through a third party or by hiring our own. We could also need to partner with the county. They have started a program, but it's totally underfunded and understaffed. They have 2 teams that go around the city. We just approved funding to help with the second team, but it hasn't been implemented yet. And so when calls go out and then we get the response that nobody's showing up, it's because they haven't hired that staff. So we need to work with the county. We need to work with our police department to get them. They acknowledge that they don't have the skills to deal with mental health issues that this would address. And so while it's been acknowledged, we need to fund that and move forward with it.
Thank you. Peter?
I've given this issue a lot of thought, and I guess a couple of the things that I'm concerned about regarding an unarmed response is, how do you do that triage when you decide to send in someone with nothing versus an armed police officer? If someone calls in and says, subject says, husband is threatening her with a knife, and what do you do? Are you going to say, oh, that's not so armed. Maybe we should, no, I mean, that's dangerous. It's a dangerous situation. There's also a situation where I'm suicidal, I'm gonna kill myself. Why would a policeman, properly trained, be any worse than someone who we hire to do that job? I feel that we have a lot of expertise in the police department now. And I know that the different police academies and people who study justice in criminal justice in college learn about unarmed responses. And furthermore, many cities have the option of the police officer not going in armed. So I think the biggest problem I have with it is the triage thing. I don't want to send a social worker in there to be stabbed or shot. I think that's just too difficult of a decision to make with some of the very small amount of information they have on hand. So generally speaking, I would say if we need to have a more social oriented response, we should try and work with our officers to get them properly trained, maybe have a group of officers that are specifically designated as being unarmed, and we can utilize them rather than signing up for somebody else.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to have our first audience question. And the question is, how do you plan to retain and recruit new business for downtown? And we will start with Mark.
Well, first of all, less government. I don't think that it's reasonable for any form of government to favor one business over another. So we should be making sure that they can operate here. They don't have to worry about being harassed by somebody higher up in the city, and then we also need to address them being taxed. The businesses are who hires us, the rest of us. That's where a lot of us make money. I personally work for a local business here. I think that we need to make sure that A, they're treated well, B, that we have plenty of public safety around so that people actually come to this city to actually spend money here. It's very important because I know that I listen to people all the time, like floating around, like Bobcat Bonnie's and Tap Room. People don't want to come there late at night because of the crime problem in that area. So we need to make sure that if you do start a business here, that they are confident that they can actually make it here and that we will actually be a partner to them.
Thank you. Stephen?
Attracting new businesses to downtown relies on the image of the city. The safety issues that have already been addressed play into that. The faster that we can resolve those kinds of issues and make downtown safe for all of our citizens, the easier we will have, easier time we'll have attracting business. We need to have the infrastructure in place. When we did a paving project with MDOT, a lot of the local businesses suffered, and that was a problem. We need to do a better job of planning those things out and scheduling those so they don't disrupt business. That's another. We need to work with the economic development department to engage developers and business owners at an earlier stage and be engaged and not wait for them. This has been an issue over the years, attracting businesses to Water Street. It would sit until somebody came forward. So there was some shopping around for that. But basically we need to address the downtown safety issue and the infrastructure for those businesses. There are a lot of buildings that are still sitting empty. Some of those were sitting empty because people applied for permits for cannabis and just sat on them and didn't get the business permits. So we need to encourage those owners to engage and not just let people sit empty. There is an ordinance that that'll be another topic. But basically we need to work on our image overall, and safety is a huge part of that. The DDA has been doing some great work in terms of funding for renovations of properties, and the city has been involved in that as well.
Thank you. Next is Peter.
From my work in the automotive sector, I'm familiar with a lot of the opportunities that are currently building. I don't think people realize how big of a deal the switch to electric vehicles is and is going to be. Those vehicles take a different kind of infrastructure, a different kind of manufacturing, different suppliers and parts. And we have, or in the process of, cleaning up our Water Street property, and I would really like to try and push to get some of those supplier businesses in there. Because jobs, good paying jobs, like the kind that people from Ypsilanti used to drive out to at the hydromatic plant or whatever, are being replaced now by a new kind of job. And that's why I'm so interested in education, making sure we're prepared, concentrating on bringing these businesses in to available property that we have, and raising the standard of living for the people in the city of Ypsilanti. These aren't your old-fashioned type jobs of the assembly line variety. These are information economy and brain type jobs using advanced manufacturing. Great care has to be put into, for instance, assembling battery packs and other components related to electric vehicles. But we can get into that. We are in the right place. Another thing that I would like to see, and we haven't really talked about it for quite a few years, is that I-94 interchange that we took out on the east side of town that used to go by the, I forget what the name of that strip mall area was there. Now that that strip mall is closed and abandoned, maybe we should consider whether that would be helpful to businesses so that people can come into Ypsi and get out of Ypsi. Thanks.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, I want to quickly respond to the concern around unarmed crisis response, just in that the triage is the issue and things like this. We do have examples of this working because there are programs that have been around for 20 years, 30 years. One is in Eugene, Oregon. It's called Cahoots. They do triage with the police department there, so it exists. We don't have to be scared of it, and we need to collaborate with these places that do these programs. As far as businesses go, I think we could help prospective business owners out, people that are interested in starting business, by letting them know what the community wants. So I think a community designed master plan around places that we want to be developed would be helpful, so that we could let developers and people and entities know that we want a grocery store, or we want worker-owned co-ops where workers make decisions around the business dealings and what the profits do and all this. So I think with a unique small town like Ypsilanti, we have an opportunity to really understand what the needs are of the community, what people actually would like as far as services and businesses go, and then send out a request for proposal, RFPs, based on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to do 2 more questions, and then we'll do closing statements. This question we have on our docket, but this is from the audience. What is your background and experience with budget management and finance? And we will start with Stephen.
My background in budgets, I'm trained as a biochemist and in environmental health. For a number of years, I ran labs at the University of Michigan, in which I applied for and received a number of NIH grants, 5-year grants, multi-million-dollar grants. For each of those, we had to propose a budget and maintain that and report on that on a yearly basis. I've been on the board of a number of nonprofits, so I understand budgets from that point of view, with grant funding and donor funding, and reaching out to that. I've been on council for the last 6 years, and I've gone through that budget every 6 years, and I think I have a pretty good handle on how that budget works. We currently have created a finance committee to make sure that the reporting on that is more frequent, and so we will have monthly updates on that budget rather than just once a year where everybody falls asleep. So we're working on that. We're having regular financial reports and with council. It's a hard thing. We have high taxes, low revenue, and a lot of services that people want. And so that's a difficult thing to balance. You know, the budget process is a partnership between the department heads and the city manager and the priorities that the council sets. So I will continue to do that. I think that's been one of my strong suits while I've been on council, is bringing a common sense approach to the budget and making sure that the city manager and the department heads do their jobs.
Thank you. Peter?
My experiences with for-profit companies, and as I mentioned earlier, I've worked on projects from anywhere between $3 million and $22 million. One of the things that, and Steve has mentioned it, is that we need financial feedback. When you're running some program that's multi-million dollars, you want to know what the cash flow is like. Where's the money going? How quickly is it being spent? In any organization, when you're dealing with finances, there's a tendency for them to, we spend everything that is allocated to us, otherwise we'll lose it next year, type of an attitude. And so we really do need to get more feedback from all of the departments on how they're spending money. For instance, in the Department of Public Works, maybe it's a very bad year for mowing lawns. Maybe they've had to mow the lawns a lot because it's been ideal conditions for lawn. Well, then that's something that we have to address. I also have to commend the City Council, because I know that budget process, they put an enormous amount of effort into it. And I think that it will be a great place for me to use my analytical and data gathering background to try and help that process along.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, so I've been a director of a federal program for regional services that includes a budget, and I work with a finance director to be able to understand what we can do with a limited budget, as well as forecasting. So I do have some experience with this, and besides that, I also helped a group this year called Ypsi Big, who ran a petition regarding the budget to make it so that anytime the Ypsilanti Police Department was interested in a budget increase, it would go to a vote of the people. So that is another way that I've helped with budgeting issues. And I just in general, this is just a personal note about me. I am pretty stingy. I'm pretty discerning about spending my own money. So I would be pretty intense about the budget. So thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
I've never really held a position like as a treasurer or anything, but I've been on the boards of many nonprofits, whether that is something like a political party or something else like a music education nonprofit. Being part of a board, you do have to vote in how we're actually going to spend our money. It's not just the treasurer and chairs or president's decision, ever. It shouldn't be. Looking at some organizations around. But yeah, otherwise, I know that everyone heard today that I work at Taproom as a server, but that is my second job. I am a software engineer at Merit Network in Ann Arbor. I am the only software engineer in the research and development department, and I have to manage resources. I have to manage how code is being submitted, how IT is going to handle our system so that we don't get into an argument with each other about something minor, which happens way more often than it should. But anyway, yeah, so I have a diverse set of just being around and just trying to be the most helpful person I can be when I'm actually involved with something. Again, I would just be staring over that budget before I would be voting on it, because we can't afford. We need to make sure that we actually can pay for things and that we're not going to harm the city just over something that sounds nice to me.
Thank you. All right, we're going to have our final question, and the topic is compromise. What is your philosophy for listening and considering the views of those you disagree with? And the first person up is Peter.
So it's a great question for me because, of course, I am running as an independent. And to a great degree, at least on local issues, I am an independent. I have a lot of acquaintances around the neighborhood, and I have never really had an argument that with them regarding their stance. I think everyone comes in with ideas and with concerns, and everyone deserves to be listened to. Ultimately, a decision has to be made, but that's one of the things that I really kind of wanted to work on, and that was we could vote on a lot more things than we do. There's, I think there's 5 voting opportunities per year that Michigan allows, and unless it's something really big, we don't vote. What I would like to see is some of these concerns, even if they seem smaller, that would affect the whole city, that would go ahead and vote. Let people vote on it. So that's one way to, I think, resolve things and make it a little bit more democratic. Another way that I would deal with people or with problems that we don't agree on is to try and just gather data. As an engineer, someone will say, I want to do this thing, or I want to add this feature, or so on and so forth. And so let's see the data. What will support that? Definitely that approach helps to clarify and bring people to consensus.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about compromise as a neutral statement, because I don't think it is. I think far too often we've compromised with developers. Far too often we've compromised with landlord monopolies. And it's because we're working in a spirit of civility and understanding everyone's coming to the table in good faith, but we have to actually understand where the interests are to actually be able to understand where we might compromise and where we might not. So I don't think compromise is a neutral statement or a value that's just good. I do think a consensus among people that are working on projects together from equal footing is good, and that's something that I've done many times, being on city commissions and various committees, working with people with very different backgrounds, interests, agendas, and it's definitely achievable. But I do think we need to be more critical about compromising with very powerful interests, which I see too often in our city.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm probably up here, and I'm probably the most unlike candidate out of the 4 of us actually sitting up here. Because, but that also is a good thing, actually, because having different ways of looking at things, different ways to actually talk to each other. I know that my favorite joke when it comes to compromise is it's a process where we all give up enough so that we're all unhappy. But it doesn't always have to be that way. We can always just sit there and actually listen to each other and actually try to do what's best for everyone around us, not just to make sure that, like, I don't give up as much because I want my own personal things so that I look like the more righteous person. No, we need to make sure that we're all working together because we all live in this city, and we had, like, I know that I'm the person who's lived here the least, but I used to be just a student here, and I stuck around. So I want to work with everybody. I actually like this town, and I like its people.
Thank you. Stephen?
I approach everybody I meet with dignity and respect. I listen to their point of view. give them the time to state their beliefs and their ideas, and make them feel heard, and that's key. You know, we are in a time of great discord, and being able to sit with someone who disagrees with you, and have a conversation to figure out why, and then you can look at the commonality of what the root goal is for both of you, and move forward with that. That has to happen on council. We have 7 people for a reason. There are going to be times where you won't be able to work to consensus. The goal is to get that figured out before we get there, so that we know how to move forward, and so it's not as contentious. But you're never going to be able to achieve that in every single time. So compromise is a fact of being in government, and you will not get your way one time, and you will get your way another time, and you establish relationships with the people that you work with. And I think I've done a very good job of that over the years that I've been here. I've worked with a lot of very diverse opinions. Although everybody said they were a Democrat, it was, I had the distinct honor of sitting between 2 people who were diametrically opposed on most things, and being the peacemaker in that situation, and being able to help them relate to each other in a way that's productive for council and for our community.
Thank you. All right, we're going to now move into closing statements. Just a reminder, you have 90 seconds, and we will begin with Peter.
Okay, thank you. My campaign is focused on education, safety, and mobility. In the past few weeks, Vice President Kamala Harris has spoken about the opportunity economy. That's a great description for my hopes for Ypsilanti as well. We're a city with great educational institution, surrounded by other great educational institutions. We need to supercharge the opportunity for our citizens to access them. This means getting truancy under control in our schools, improving literacy, and developing an Ypsilanti Promise program to enable more people to pursue a college or technical education. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and I want to see a lot more. We also need to be a safe city for everyone. We need to make the mental health millage do what it's supposed to do, provide mental health care for those who need it. We also need to provide addiction intervention and stop being a drug haven. There is nothing progressive about letting people overdose on our streets and in our parks. We're in a great location. We have easy access to Ann Arbor, Detroit, and Toledo. Easy access for us to go there? No. Easy access for them to come here, to spend their money, enjoy our cool city. Nobody should be stuck in a low-paying job. Nobody should have to sell blood for food. It is time for every expectation for upward mobility, and time to focus on ways to make that happen in Ypsi.
Thank you. And now for your closing statement, Amber.
Yeah, I want to just thank everybody for your time tonight, listening to us speak about local issues. I, get a lot out of going around and canvassing my neighbors to learn, where people are at. And what I'm finding is that there's a lot of consensus. It's not always the case, but it is kind of amazing how, just based on our geographical proximity, how many of us have the same or similar desires and goals and dreams. So it's just a pleasure to be in this community, and I love Ypsilanti too, and I find it great that, Mark and I have different views and values, and we both love this town and can be together here. And I guess just lastly, I've been campaigning since basically 2022 on a similar platform, so I'm just going to repeat it. Fighting landlord monopolies is very important at Ypsilanti. I also think we need to begin to really uplift communities that have been pushed in the margins and explore things like reparations through city commissions. And we need to work together to bring more opportunity to everyday residents into the decision-making process. And I also want to invite others out there that are interested in these type of forums to maybe make more forums. So it's not just upon the League of Women Voters to do one, but we have diverse types of forums too, with different types of questions. Thank you for your time. My website is amberforthepeople.com. I'm also on social media. And good night.
Thank you. Mark, you're next.
Thanks for having me here. I just want to say that I respect you all here at Ypsilanti enough to not waste your money and to not waste your time. I think that we need to make sure that everything around us that we need fixed and maintained gets the attention it deserves, whether that's our bridges that have been, closing here and there all over the place this past year, the roads, the police, whatever. My goal is to not further my political agenda. It is to help run this city and try to make sure that we have the best city and that everything just works and flows smoothly, and that we all can live here and be happy.
Thank you. And Stephen.
I'd like to thank the league and the library for having this forum. I know there are other forums out there, and I agree with Amber that the more of these we can have, the better people will be informed to make decisions in the fall and throughout the rest of the year. I've been doing this job for 6 years. I learned a lot. The 2 years before that, I attended every single council meeting for about a year and a half to study what was happening in the city and how the budgets were set, and to do that. Since I've been on council, I think I've been a factor in getting people to talk to each other. That has gone a long way to get more through council. I know it doesn't seem like it sometimes, but it truly has. We have a vibrant community here. We have a great arts scene. We have wonderful businesses, and we need to continue that. We also have aging infrastructure that has been neglected for 50 years. And in order to get that taken care of, it's going to take partnerships and with the state and federal governments. And I've been working through MML and SEMCOG to build those relationships to attract that kind of funding and go after that kind of funding to benefit the community as a whole. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you to the candidates for your responses and to the audience for your questions. We will now ask the Board of Education candidates to take your seat up front.